No, personally, I adore his comedy, and he's like an amazing comedian. But I don't know if we've met.
I was sat here with him 2 weeks ago and he said to me, he says, Steve, when you meet a comedian, you don't ask a comedian if they're depressed. You ask them which one of their parents is depressed.
That's a good way to say it. Sure. Well, my mother was a schizophrenic, so I tend to think on the mental illness hierarchy, she was kind of the gold standard, whereas depression, all due respect, is slightly less. And then I think my father might have been on and off depressed, but schizophrenia was the you know, central challenge in her life.
For people that don't know what that is or haven't experienced it, how does it sort of manifest being schizophrenic, especially for you as a 10-year-old when you have a schizophrenic parent?
Yeah. It started to really come out when I was about 13 and 12 or 13. It's a lot of paranoia. It's a lot of confusion that as a child you're trying to contextualize. You don't really understand why your mother is talking about people following her or these grand, elaborate stories that aren't true. And even at 12 or 13, you know they're not true. And you're worried for her because physical illness is very easy to kind of understand as a child because, somebody gets sick. As a child, you get sick, so you get it. Mental illness is much tougher to understand. As a child, you only really start to understand it as you go through life. And when you become more of an adult, you start to look back at it because you've had your own mental struggles. You know people that have had mental struggles. At 12, you really don't, for most 12-year-olds. So it's something that I've understood more as I got older, and then it was kind of just very disorienting and confusing.
And what was the sort of cost or the impact that confusion had? Because, yeah, you're so right. With schizophrenia in particular, when you can compare how your parents are acting to other parents, that sort of disparity or that like distinction must be quite...
It's jarring.
Yeah.
It's jarring. When you're young and you are at somebody else's house and you see the way their mother is talking and you see the way that the family interacts, and in your house when that is different. And my mother was a very fun person, very eccentric, a free spirit her whole entire life she had been. It wasn't hellish to grow up with her. I loved her and she loved me a lot. But around my early teen years, it became apparent that something was wrong. I think I was in the car one day, and I remember she said, there are people that are following us, but don't worry, they're protecting me. And I found that to be so crazy, like doubly crazy, right? Not only did she believe that there were people following her, but that they were doing it to protect her. I thought that was so crazy. And I remember being young and hearing that and internalizing that as something is actually really wrong. And I remember thinking about it and telling a friend of mine, like, I think my mother, is crazy, and I don't know, and that got progressively worse as I got older.
And what was the impact of all of that on you? Like growing up in that family home, how does that shape you? And does that leave any sort of fingerprints on you that are still with you today in terms of comedy or who you are?
Yeah, for sure. The fragility of